Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. McDougall with your next Photoshop tutorial project. In this lesson we are going to learn how to make an Instagram carousel. And what an Instagram carousel is when you see multiple pictures on Instagram that you can swipe through and it seems seamless. So similar to this, when you see a really long photo that's been stretched out and you can kind of swipe between all three of them and it looks like they're all connected. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that right now. So first, as usual, let's download our exercise files. Click the file, click the three dots, and then open a new window. That will bring us to this page where we can download them. Perfect. Now it's downloaded as a zip file. Let's extract it, take it out of our downloads folder, and save it to our Google Drive. So let's click on the file, downloads. Here it is right here, the exercise files. Remember to right click and then extract all. This is not checked, which is what we want, and then click extract. That puts a set of files in a non-zippered folder. So now this one is useless and we can delete it. This is the one that we want with the exercise files. However, we're not going to leave them here. We're going to put them in our Google Drive. So let's open Google Drive so we can save them and they'll be backed up and not stuck on this computer. My Drive, Intro to Graphics. We have one for Photoshop. Let's make a new folder for today. This one is 505 Instagram Carousel. So let's move the whole folder in there, just like that. So now our exercise files are right here, right where we want them. We don't need these anymore in the downloads folder. All right, now we're ready to go. Let's open up Photoshop. We have 4 exercise files we're going to play with, and you can see from the file that they're a little stretched out because we want longer photos, more landscape photos. So this will work for you if you have a landscape photo. It's one that's long from stretched from left to right. Maybe you have a big scene of a mountain or a car or something that you want to fit on Instagram, but you need more than one photo to do it. This is how we're going to do it. So for this one, we need to actually create new files that are going to be the specifications that we want. So let's create a new file. Remember, you can go to File and then New, or the shortcut is Control N. Let's do it both ways today, and I'll show you. So File, New, and we need to set our custom settings. So let's do one. We're going to start out with different levels of squares. Title this one 2 square, just to keep it organized, and you'll know what we're doing. So this one's going to be 2 square. We're going to divide it in half so it fits on 2 photos. So we need to do a few specifications for this one. This is going to be one of the first times we're going to mess around with some of these settings. So first thing is change this from inches to pixels. The pixel count will make it easier to make sure it fits digitally. Inches is good when we want something that's going to be framed. Pixels is what we want when we want something that is digital. So a normal Instagram square, the default standard one is 1080. So if I type where it says width, I'm going to do 1080. If I type height and I put 1080, remember 1080 by 1080, that's a 1-to-1 ratio. That makes it a square. Just like this. That's what you see here. This is 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels, making it a perfect square. So a normal Instagram post is going to look like that. So what we need to do is make the canvas enough for however many squares that we want. So in this first example, we're going to make it big enough for 2 squares like this. Okay? So we know that this is 180 pixels and this is 180 pixels. So this needs to be 180 times 2 for the width right here, because it's going to be 180 right here and then 180. So we just need to do some simple math, and the width is going to be 180 times 2, which if you don't know it off the top of your head, it is 2160. So for this 2 square one, the width needs to be 2160. The height is 1080. We have our name 2 square, and now we can hit create. So you'll see this is a rectangle, but it's 2 Instagram squares perfectly fit. So now we're going to bring in our first example. So it says in the instructions, first start with carousel 1, and we're going to divide it into 2 columns. So let's do that. Let's open up our files. What you could do now that you have a new file is you can open up your files right here, and we can just drag and drop it here to add it to our canvas. So I'm going to take carousel 1. I'm just going to click, drag, and drop it right in there. And it puts it into my project on its own layer right here. So first we're just going to stretch it out to the edges so it covers the white areas, maybe to about right there, and till about right there. And we can move it and try to center it best we can. There, that puts it right in the middle. These pink grid lines will help guide you to make sure you're right in the middle instead of having to eyeball it. All right. So now we're going to go to our next step, and I'm going to show you what it looks like if you just do it this way. I still have this X because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide grid lines. And let me show you what happens if you don't, if you skip a step. If you go to, we're going to go to View and then Guides, and then we're going to do New Guide Layout. You'll see that mine's grayed out. That's because I'm not done with my action of resizing it right here. I had to click away, or I had to click, I had to click maybe that checkbox right here or hit enter. Now that X is gone, and now it agrees that my action was confirmed. So now I can go to my next step. So the next step, as I mentioned, is going to View. We're going to go to View right here at the top. We're going to go to Guide, and then New Guide Layout. You see how it's not grayed anymore? I could choose it. If you ever see something that's grayed out, it means, most likely means that you haven't completed something. You're still in the middle of a step. Check up here to make sure there's no little checkbox or something, because it's waiting for you to do that before you can access certain menus. So we're going to go to New Guide Layout. You'll see all this right here. Don't worry about any of this. It looks very confusing, but that's okay. Right here where it says gutter, just delete the whole thing. I'm not going to have any gutters. Just delete it so it doesn't say anything. And for this one, we're going to divide it into 2 columns. So by default, it's on 8 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one, we want it to be 2. So just type in the number 2. And you'll see now it's split. Now it's column 1 and column 2. And then click OK. So what this is it set up guidelines right here. These blue lines are just guides. They're not actually going to be in your image when you export it. But it's just setting up a guide to tell you exactly where the middle is. So this is exactly center right here. So I might actually like this guy right here. Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we need to cut right here. This is going to help us slice it so we can divide this into 2 images. And we don't need to cut it ourselves. We're going to use a simple tool called the slice tool. So that is hidden over here with the crop tool. Remember I mentioned that a lot of these tools have more than one tool associated with it. If you look at the little tiny arrow that's next to it, it means there's a group of similar tools with it. So in the crop tool, click and hold your mouse, and you'll see some other similar ones pop up. We're going to go to this slice tool right here. Click on slice tool, and you'll see your mouse turns in like a little knife looking thing, and you don't actually have to slice down here perfectly. All you have to do now is click this box that says slice from guides. If I click that, you can see what happened. It outlined, here's number 1, here's number 2. It automatically cut the photo where the guidelines are. Just like that. Okay, so we'll leave that one for right now, and we'll get started on our next one before we export everything. Actually, let's export it right now. That'll make it easier, and then we'll move on to the next one. So now we're going to export it, and the way we're going to do that is export, file. Sorry, we're going to export. We're going to go to file, and then export. This one's going to be slightly different for this one. We're not going to do export as. We're going to do save for web, legacy, right here. You see this one where it says save for web? If I click that, the only thing you need to change on here is this, where it says GIF optimized file format, change it to JPEG. Always default as a JPEG, it just makes things easier, and then you're going to click save. And then you just need to tell it where to save. So if we go to our PC, we should have our Google Drive, so we can just save it with the others. My Classroom, Photoshop, IG Carousel, we'll just save it in here as the 2-square one. It should say this by default. It should say all slices, but just double check that it says all slices. You should not have to change anything right here, but just double check that this says all slices, and then click save. So now what it just did is it exported these 2 photos separately, cut. So if I look right here, if I go back to my files for Carousel, here's my images one right here, and here's my 2 pictures. Here's number 1, and then here's number 2. You can see it's cut. So now I could put these on Instagram as one post, and you could swipe between the 2. All right, let's do another one. So you're going to do all 4 files, dividing them the exact same way. So now we're going to do Carousel number 2 into 3 columns, Carousel number 3 into 4 columns, etc., etc. For each one, you must repeat all the steps, starting with a new file. So let's go to File and New, or Control N. I'm going to do Control N for this one. I'm going to hold Control and then hit N to bring up the new file menu. So this one, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do 3 squares. So we're going to do 1080, and then we're going to do 1080 times 1, 2, 3. So we need 3 squares pixels for the width. So the height's going to stay the same. The height's always going to be 180. This is what's going to change. So this one's going to be 3 square. And the width will be 1080 times 3. which if you don't know it off the top of your head is 3240. That's the number of pixels for the width. And then let's hit create. So you can see the same thing. This is staying the same. We're just getting, now we're 3 squares long for this one. Let's bring in our next exercise file. That will be this one with the dog. So just drag it, drop it right in there. And again, stretch the sides just so it goes to the outside so we don't see the white edges anymore. Right about there. That looks good. All right, I like that. Remember to hit this checkbox right here to confirm your action. And now, same thing. We're going to go up to View, Guides, New Guide Layout, and this time we're doing 3 columns. So change the number of columns to 3. We don't need rows. We don't want rows. We're not going to cut it this way, so make sure rows is turned off. We just want columns so it cuts down like this. Perfect. Click OK, and then let's slice it up again. Go back to the Slice tool right over here, and then Slice from Guides. There you go, easy peasy. Now it's cut it into 3 perfectly symmetrical squares. Let's export this one again. Export, save for web legacy. This is already on JPEG. Hit save, and it's already remembered that this is my folder. So let's go to save. So if I go back here again, I could see it saved it in the same folder. Now I have this one right here with this one cut into 3 squares. Perfect. Now we're going to do the same thing 2 more times with files 3 and 4. This one will cut into 4 squares, and this one we will cut into 5 squares. Each one will do the same repeated process. So you need to create a new file. For the 4 square one, this needs to be 1080 times 4, call it 4 square. And for the 5 square one, this needs to be 1080 times 5, call it 5 square, and you're just going to slice it into that many columns. Okay? If you forgot how to do it, go back and rewatch this video on how to get to those exact steps, but you're just repeating the whole process 2 more times, and then you're going to turn in all of your exported cuts right here. So all of the cuts you have right here, turn in every single one of them attached to the assignment. You do not need to take any screenshots for this one. Just turn in all of these cut files, and then you can turn in and submit. Okay? Great job. Let me know if you have any questions.